And bang. No. Okay, there we go. Hello, everyone. We're here with the calculator debate. This is a very professionally hosted MCSR news segment. We are here with Four. We are here with
Hello.
TWag. And we are here with
Hello.
Ninjabrain. And myself,
Yo.
obviously. Hey, I'm Fulham. I'm sure you guys know me. You're here. We're going to be talking about the topic that is calculators in a broad sense. However, we are also going to be opening the floor to questions come the end. I don't want to get into that right now, but if anyone has any really early questions, the questions will be open with exclamation mark question in the chat. It'll take you to a form. You can submit your questions there, and we will ask them to Four and TWag at the end. Ninjabrain and I, actually, I'm gonna just say Ninjabrain has mostly come up with the questions and topics for debate today, and I'm just gonna pin that in our personal chat just so that we can hop back to it pretty quickly if needed. But yeah, real quick rundown. We're gonna be talking about three sort of main topics, two or three main topics. We won't spend a ton of time kind of adjudicating what's going on. I don't want to be butting in. I want this to be as open of a discussion as possible. So it's going to be a debate, but obviously, you know, we're friends here. We're not trying to be, we're not throwing punches or anything. And I know that this is a relatively heated discussion. You know, I've seen many heated discussions on Twitter. I've seen lots of, info flying around from lots of different perspectives, from streamers, from people with big followings, from people with small followings, from and everyone has their very own opinion. We tried to get two top runners and prevalent members in the community, quite importantly.
Top runners.
I think you're both top runners. You've been here for a long time as well, so you're very integral parts of the community, with somewhat opposing views to be able to discuss what your opinions are and what you think the best outcome for this is going to be. So I will let Ninjabrain discuss a little bit further. If you have anything to add, Ninjabrain, I don't want to take the floor from you. I'll let you kick things off.
No, I think you summarized it pretty well. I think the best way to start would be for the panelists to introduce their position, if they're pro or anti, quickly, and then we can get into the first topic.
Sure.
So TWags, you can go ahead and
Okay.
explain your position.
Sure. My name's TWags. I've mainly been doing a lot of MCSR strat developing. I started speedrunning last June, so a little over a year now. And my thoughts on calculators are pretty much a full calculator ban. So I'll be taking the position of no calculators used at all in the majority of categories for MCSR.
Awesome. And Four?
I'm Four. I've been running this game since August of last year. I also kind of focus more on strat development and whatnot. You may know me as the perfect travel guy and that one multi-instance macro guy. And I am taking the position of a full calculator on ban. I think calculators are the future, and we need to get over this mindset we have where they're some kind of evil.
All right. Awesome. So before going to the first topic, I quickly want to announce that at the end there will be a moment to ask questions to TWags and Four. And so if you want to ask a question, you gotta fill out that form, which you can do. Just so it's more organized. Yeah, awesome. You have your command as well.
Yeah.
All right, so then let's get to the first topic, which is all about how speedruns will be changed if an unbanned is implemented. So, a lot of strategies currently relating to the double travel and triangulation will become obsolete if calculators become allowed. And for example, just to name a few, we have distance estimation, 8-8, ability to determine good blind chords, access calculator, perfect travel, and a bunch of others. And yeah, so player skill in those areas will be replaced by a tool. And another part that will be changed, for example, is that more end games will be playable, because calculators help the most when you hit a bad blind, so endgame RNG won't be as frustrating. And these are only like a couple of ways in which an unban will change the way an RSG run is played. So my question to the panelists is, how severely will an unban change the way an RSG run is played? And is this change for the better or worse? And I'm gonna give the opening statement to TWags.
Thank you. Okay, so I think how this is kind of going to work out is this first topic is going to be the majority one. We only have one more topic I think is going to be a little bit minor. I have the most to say on this first one, so you're going to have to bear with me. I'm going to go through 3 main bullet points I want to talk about on this, and then I would assume we'll go back and forth kind of on rebuttals, is the general idea. So this is going to be kind of my longest talking segment here, so bear with me. An unban will change how a speedrun is played fairly drastically. It's not going to change everything, but a calculator unban will change quite a lot. I want to talk about my bullet points. Traditionally, how people have thought about this, the definitions of things like tools. Number 2, what we've tried in the past, we've actually basically done this before and what happened. And number 3, how I think this is going to impact the future if a calculator unban was on the table or was allowed. So first off, why are we talking about this? I guess there's so much debate is because this is kind of an irregular issue. You know, most other games don't have a calculator giving you an advantage, so it doesn't really apply. And Minecraft speedrunning is the most popular speedrun game of all time. So it makes sense this is kind of important for us to talk about, and we need to get this right. We don't want any gray areas. We should make the right decision, one that we're all happy with, and stick to it from here on out because it affects the leaderboards. So what I mean by tradition is people that spend a lot of time on their speed runs, grinding a certain category, get a certain time, and we have a leaderboard to tell us where they stack up against everyone else. And so you really want to define a set of rules that's going to last throughout time. So traditionally, you don't hurt other people by making their speedrun times kind of obsolete, by giving an advantage to future runners. So I think traditionally it makes the most sense to have a full calculator ban. What we have now is okay, but I would prefer just not allowing calculators at all. Now, about definitions, I want to talk about tools and calculators because a lot of things that are happening right now, like multi-instance, Starlight, calculators, a lot of people jumble them together. But I do want to point out under the Wikipedia article for speedrun, the definition of a tool-assisted speedrun. Tool-assisted speedrunning is a type of speedrun in which various computer tools are used to obtain performances which would be near impossible for a human player and are not held in competition with speedruns done by human players in real time. So, you know, if you look at different speedruns or different games like GoldenEye, for instance, maybe they'd be talking about an aimbot or something that would help you speedrun by a superhuman, you know, machine accuracy. We don't need to talk about that in Minecraft. If we look at a game like Super Mario, maybe a macro that inputs a perfect frame perfect jump at a certain point would be really helpful. But again, it's a machine aid, so obviously it's not allowed. My opinion on this is if you, for instance, a lot of us are used to the RSG mindset of double travel or perfect travel. If you're exiting the nether at 10 minutes and your coordinates 1326, negative 1748, you throw an eye and it goes 42.9 degrees, you throw another eye and it goes 42.1 degrees. Could you realistically pinpoint the exact block you need to dig down in less than 0.1 seconds? No, I don't care how good you are at math. That is simply by definition superhuman. That is by definition near impossible for a human player. So by a strict definition of the sense, all of these other tools that are obvious in other games, calculators seem less obvious in Minecraft, but it is strictly a tool, and that is my argument. So it's great if you want to go super fast and use every possibility, everything in the world to your advantage to beat Minecraft as quickly as you can, I would argue that would just put it in a tool assisted category. And, Emma Circuit's tool assisted runs are sick. They're super cool to watch. You can beat the game in like a minute. It's crazy. But a calculator is a superhuman advantage. And I believe it just doesn't have a place in a speedrun. And that gets to my basic tenet. I think there's a few basic tenets of speedrunning, and I would consider one of them to be human versus game. Everyone has a basic set of tools required to just baseline play a game or optimize performance. But beyond that, I think everyone, for the most part, agrees human versus game is the most exciting traditional definition way to speedrun. Okay, so now I have 2 more points. I'm going to try to get through these quickly, but we have tried this in the past. And what happened? We didn't have a firm grasp on which tool and which age should be banned or which should be allowed. And so I believe, I don't remember the timeline for this. I believe it might have been the beginning of this year around then. People started exploring with more precision nether travel methods and came out with ThrowPro. Some of you may remember this, some of you may not, but ThrowPro was an external program developed by Kudu. Basically, you would throw an eye, zoom in, maybe throw 2, maybe throw 3. You would F3C, and the tool would tell you exactly where to dig. It was pretty split. I'd say the majority of the community said they would never use it when it came out. Myself included, I was very adamantly opposed to it. After about a week and a half, pretty much everyone had downloaded it and was using it. After we saw people like Corbanos in 1.14 use it to pretty much pinpoint the exact location of a stronghold very rapidly, saving a lot of eyes in 1.14 is huge. Not downloading it and using it just became a handicap. It was similar to, Illumina not using F3. It's really cool. It was something that Illumina's fans kind of grabbed onto. It was his thing. He used his skill expression without using F3 to play the game faster than other people. It was really cool. But, after seeing the power of F3, wanting a really good time on the leaderboards, you just have to use it. So Illumina now uses F3 to get a faster time on the leaderboards in 1.16. Maybe it was more fun, but kind of forces you in a position to use it. So ThrowPro, when calculators were fully unbanned, I didn't want to use it, but after a week and a half, I downloaded it too. And I was running with ThrowPro, and it kind of sucked. It felt bad. I'm not going to lie. The majority of the community at the time agreed that we didn't really want to be forced into a machine just taking out a skill expression part of the game like triangulation, and we decided to ban it. So we already tried this again. A lot of people don't remember this time and want a full calculator unbanned, but I can pretty much guarantee you after a couple weeks, you're not going to want it. So that's my very last point in this before I, yield the floor here, is that if we do go for a full calculator unban, I can almost guarantee you what's going to happen. People are going to be hitting I spies. It's going to be exciting for a couple weeks. We're going to be getting faster times. People are going to be more interested, but it's going to get stale. It's going to get boring. I mean, it's like if someone were to offer you free pizza for every day for the rest of your life, but with the caveat that that's all you could eat. I mean, sure, it'd be fun for like 10 days, but after a while, you'd be like, man, I really want some sushi or a cheeseburger or a milkshake or something, but all you can have is pizza. If everyone is forced to download and use a ThrowPro program that just tells them where the stronghold is, it's not going to be exciting. As soon as I Spy is expected, it's no longer going to be enjoyable. So, I think especially this is going to have the biggest impact in the tourney scene. Right now, when people exit the nether, it's like, oh, how much practice they have? How do they express their skill in using Axis Calculated? Can they do manual perfect travel? Have they spent a ton of hours practicing manual perfect to hit the I Spy and save a couple minutes? And it's really exciting seeing the different methods of nether travel. But with full calculator unban, no more distance estimate, no more Axis Calculated, no more manual perfect travel. You kind of just turn off your brain and it's all done for you. And it's going to get a little bit stale, and I think the community is going to suffer for it. There's going to be less interest. But I think without calculators, the tournament scene continues to be exciting. So with that, I'm pretty much done for my first talking point.
All right. So I want to go into your definition kind of a task and what a tool is. I've been tasking games for like 7 years now, And typically, I've only ever seen a tool in regards to a task being something that actually deals with the inputs to the game. So all the other runs I've done, RTA, have allowed plenty of tools. They just aren't ones that do inputs to the game. So, like, I've run Pokemon Blue Catch 'em All before, and there's a lot of tools that go into that. You basically need a 20-page PDF to actually do the run open at all times, or else you're completely lost. Wind Waker 100% uses a calculator. It's basically necessary for the run for the Sploosh Kaboom minigame. Without the calculator, I don't know what percentage of it, but a significant number of runs would just die to that minigame. With the calculator, they get through it every single time. And I also want to bring up the idea that I think spreadsheets are a superhuman tool that we use for our runs. I mean, you say nobody can just look at their coordinates and their two angle changes and calculate in their head what they're doing to get the I Spy. Well, when you're using the perfect travel spreadsheet, you're not going to ever be able to do that in your head either. I think that's kind of a superhuman tool that we've already conceded would be acceptable, tolerable to some degree. Um, so I guess let's focus on one point at a time for our rebuttals, so it's not just like 10 minutes of talking back and forth. So I guess that's my response to your first point.
Okay. Yeah, if I could do, I guess, a quick rebuttal on this. Yeah, I think, again, a full calculator on ban, to me, a calculator would be considered an external tool that is superhuman, but that doesn't necessarily mean that as a community, we need to just say, oh, it's a tool, that's it, no more discussion. I think if the majority of the community still feels that having calculators are the most fun and are worth it, and they don't care that much about affecting the previous leaderboard's rankings and that there's an advantage now, then I can't say anything. At the end of the day, Minecraft speedrunning and games in general are about having the most fun. And if you guys think it's the most fun, I can't really argue at that point. So I'm okay conceding that one. So a calculator that you bring up in like Wind Waker, that seems like a really annoying thing to deal with. So if the majority of the Wind Waker community is like, yeah, we just need a calculator for this point, it's a tool, whatever, that's fine. I totally accept that. And then the next point on spreadsheets being superhuman, I kind of have a way to split up different tools and ideas that we have to help us in a Minecraft speedrun. I don't need to get into that now, I guess, but I think you can pretty much break everything that's been brought up into four major categories, either basic requirements for speedrun, performance optimizers, filters, and external tools. Under basic requirements, I would put obviously computer and monitor, live split, some recording, and what is generally accepted to be allowed is written aids, reminders, and general advice from others, like in a voice call or something. So I think having something written down, like I've had this has been with me for, oh God, is this embarrassing? I don't know, maybe this is embarrassing. This has been with me on my second monitor for like a year and a half now. This, can you
Oh,
see that? It's just general blind chords. How many, this one is how many hits to kill the dragon, 5 hits with an axe, with the sword. So in general, most communities have agreed that written reminders are totally allowed. So I would argue that a spreadsheet that you have to physically look through is totally fine. A spreadsheet where you control F and it exactly tells you the number you're looking for, or a macro that does that on Twitch, is not allowed. That's computer aid.
okay. So I agree. Like, yeah, like I don't think anybody's arguing against like writing down how many hits it takes to kill the dragon or
Right.
coordinates like that. But I think the gray area really comes in with a spreadsheet the size of the perfect travel sheet, because I don't use Control F when I do it manually, and I still go through 36,000 lines or whatever in like 5 seconds. So I still think that's like an inhuman amount of information to process without the sheet, without having dedicated spreadsheet software to manage it for you. Like I don't know. I feel like the act of grabbing the scroll bar and pulling it to a certain point is kind of like an algorithmic search
Mm.
in a way. So it's interesting to me that most people are okay with just the sheet itself existing, but when the idea of Control F is brought up, then it becomes a problem when really Control F is slower in this case because Google Sheets is kind of crappy sometimes. Depends on PC hardware to Control F. So, I don't know. I do agree that a more basic spreadsheet like a divine table is definitely fine.
Mm. Yeah, I'm personally pretty far to one side where I would say the divine Twitch macro is not okay with me. I think that's,
Hmm.
even though it's a small series of numbers, it's only 15. It gives you a couple coordinates. I think that's very easy to, I just showed an example of something I wrote on a notepad. I think that's very easy to have up on the side, and having a computer just fetch those numbers for you, I think is I would prefer the simplest, most strictest definition of human versus game, and so I think that just falls under machine aid, even if it's small. So,
Uh,
and then to your point about dragging down a spreadsheet, I think there's some gray area there. I won't lie. I think human versus game is the most simple, kind of no gray area way to do it. But, I may be able to argue scrolling through a spreadsheet really quickly to get to a certain spot is similar to flipping through a book that you've printed out of tabulated data where you know where does you want to go. Maybe it's faster on a computer. Maybe that's an argument for another day. But
um,
I do agree with you. Yeah.
okay.
And I guess our second topic is mainly on gray areas. So we can
Yeah.
talk more about that later. But yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I guess there just is a fundamental disagreement as to like what counts as a tool really between us. So I guess that's up for people to really decide where they end up lying on that line. And then
Yeah.
yeah. Um I want to now go into the idea of the throw pro meta.
Mhm.
Um Now, I never used Throw Pro. I didn't know it existed back then. I used a really absolutely garbage online stronghold calculator that like put me 200 blocks away every time.
Mhm.
And I actually have a verified run on the boards after calculators were banned due to a confusion where I used that, but that's a different story. I think things were way different back then. So the difference between a Throw Pro user and an intuitive triangulator back then is way bigger than somebody now versus a calculator user. Like back then, we had no idea what we were doing. We didn't even really know how to distance estimate. We were just kind of looking at things and going, yeah, the eye changed a bit. I'm gonna go a few hundred more blocks and then throw again. So I think using the Throw Pro meta as like a comparison isn't necessarily reflective of what we have going on nowadays. And then also I'm not trying to like insult you or anything when I say this, but I think your memory of it might be a bit tunnel visioned onto the bad things of it. Like maybe somebody did throw one eye and then YOLO the stronghold one time, but I watched every PB I could find where somebody used Throw Pro, and they almost always did 3 eye throws. They'd do the 2 to get really close, and then the third one to dig down, which having a calculator do that for you, I'll admit, is probably easier and less stressful than having to do that yourself. But your average skilled player who's practiced with the game and triangulated quite a lot, they can do a 3-eye triangulation like that most of the time. It is more difficult, I will concede that, but I don't think in terms of the actual impact on eye breaks or whatever, that kind of a calculator would really have much of a difference. And though we'd probably be able to make better calculators now, especially with the advent of precise measurement. So I guess I don't know. I'd like to. What do you think the ideal calculator we'd have nowadays would be capable of doing? I guess is a point I want to get to.
Yeah, I think it would exacerbate the issues in 116 RSG, because I think now that we're a lot more used to multiple travel methods. We have more optimized bastion routes where we can get, squeeze out more obsidian to get 20 obsidian in a faster amount of time. I think throwing one eye or perhaps just throwing two eyes and rapidly next to each other and rapidly F3 seeing both of those would result in a pretty drastic difference. I think we would hit eye spies a lot, and we're already seeing it with the perfect macro.
Right.
Cube has been using it for a while. I know Nice Choice had a recent PB uploaded run where he uses perfect, travels into a cave, but he knows where the stronghold is, so he just digs into the starter. So I think it changes the current state of affairs, which is 5-10% of the time you're going to hit I Spy with 20 obby, which makes it really exciting, to more than 50% of the time you're getting I Spy, and so it becomes expected. And so if you don't hit it, it's just sad. You did something wrong or
right.
something like that.
You're kind of presuming that the person is not doing perfect travel. People have been doing perfect travel for months now, are kind of used to hitting I Spy half the time or more, or 100% of the time if they do double perfect. So I guess that kind of I'll get onto that in a second, but I kind of so if you want a calculator to actually be good, you have to do precise eye measurement, because I couldn't use Throw Pro obviously because that's long gone, but I used Ninjabrain bot and I had it set up to where I could like tweak the standard deviation and everything, and the only way I was able to consistently eye spy is when I was measuring it down to the exact hundredth of a degree, which I'd argue is the most important part of executing a perfect travel, because that to me is where all the work goes in. You have to identify your correct subpixel, you have to actually get the lineup. There's the pause buffering to get there. It's all, and you have to do it within the time before the eye pops. So that's where all the skill is. I don't think reading a number off a list and then adding that to the number on your screen is really that critical of a part of the whole process. So I guess what I'm arguing now is that perfect travel is, I'd argue it is the optimal play to be doing, and a calculator doing perfect travel versus a person doing perfect travel really doesn't matter that much in terms of the impact on the run.
Yeah, I would just have to disagree with you on that one, because I think in my mind it's not necessarily that it's perfect is always the play and people have been doing it. It's the time save that a computer offers you. I've seen plenty of runs where Molly G will, throw his first eye and he'll have 10 obby and he'll pause for 3 minutes, making sure he gets the exact perfect offsets and then getting those numbers. And, now we have perfect macro that is basically like a full calculator in ban.
Okay,
For the
I
most
agree
part
with
does it for you.
I agree with you that the perfect macro is a calculator. I am amazed so many people are actually using it. It kind of blows my mind, but um, I mean, nobody's stopping them, so I can't blame them. But if you look at Crooks to do manual perfect, he does it like in a blink of an eye. He has all his information done. He's back in the Nether fighting his blazes, and he has the math done before the next wave even spawns. So I don't think there really is that much time save with a calculator versus a practiced perfect travel user. I mean, Molly G, he doesn't take 3 minutes to do it now. That was when he was learning the strat, and it was like the third time he was ever doing it. He can do the strat manually now in a short amount of time. I don't think him pausing for 10 minutes that one time is reflective of the totality of perfect travel.
Well, yeah, I was mainly bringing that up as an example of what a majority of runners would probably go through, myself included. If I were to do 116 right now with no calculators, I'm just doing basic distance estimate. If I feel like spending some time relearning axis calculator and getting really good at it, I would do that. But perfect for me is time sink in real life, and I don't know if I care that much about getting fast times in order to learn it. So
Right.
for me, a full calculator ban versus a full calculator unban is drastic because I don't have to
Right.
spend time. I don't have to learn anything. It just does it for me. So it is a huge time save for the majority of, I think, runners that aren't just grinding RSG 10 hours a day. And the last thing I wanted to mention, I think we have a difference of opinion in what we value as a more entertaining skill expression. For me, measuring the eye and lining up and getting on 31 FOV, I couldn't really care less. I don't find that really skillful or interesting. I find the mathematical prowess of being able to go back in the nether after throwing an eye instantaneously and coming up with the coordinates you have to nether travel to in 5 seconds really impressive. I myself can't do that. I find it amazing when runners do this manually. And I think in tournament, it's just really impressive when you're good with math. So
Uh, I mean, I guess, yeah. I feel like if you've actually done perfect travel, you'd kind of most people I think who do it are of the opinion that the eye measuring part is the more involved part of it than the math, because the math for perfect travel, it's you just add two numbers together and then double them. So, I mean, it is cool to be able to do that under pressure. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I I don't like the fact that it would be less impressive with a calculator on ban, but I will say this is a point I was going to get to later. But in a tournament, tournaments can decide their own rule sets, and I think tournaments should keep calculators banned because they're more for the performance aspect of the game. They're putting on a show for the audience. So I think tournaments can decide if they want to keep calculators banned. They don't have to adhere to the leaderboard rule set. So I don't really think the tournament argument is one that really should impact whether or not the SRC leaderboards on ban calculators.
yeah, we disagree a little bit. I mean, that's true for the most part. MSL right now is doing a full calculator ban, essentially external tool ban, and it was
Mm-hmm.
really impressive seeing people do manual perfect. So I think the RSG rule set does have some impact on tournaments, though. For instance, if a full calculator on ban is a thing and everyone is just using a throw pro type program and getting sub 12s or sub 11s, and it's really common and I spy is just a thing, I think it does make tournaments a little more stale when people are not hitting I spies and people are running slower than their PBs consistently. So I think it would be a little more stale, but yeah, tournaments can do their own thing. It's true.
I've never run a tournament, so I guess I'd have to see what a tournament organizer. Have you ever like organized a tourney or been part of that?
Yeah, yeah, I've
Okay,
organized one. Yeah,
okay, so
it's
I
epic.
guess I have to value your opinion on that somewhat. That's fair, yeah.
Yeah, I'm more biased towards the tournament scene a lot. You know, I
That
like to
that makes
commentate
sense then.
more than play. So I have a lot more tournament focus in mind as a. I think they've played a pretty big part in growing the community in general,
Oh, for
and
sure.
the RSG rule set does have some impact on what decisions we make. So
That okay. Yeah. And then I guess we kind of touched on this a little bit, but you mentioned how people used Throw Pro after a week of standing the ground and saying they wouldn't give into it because it was just that much of an advantage. Maybe I'm biased as the creator of the strat, but I think Perfect Travel is it's going it's so I guess there's three situations how your post nether plays out in runs now. Either pop out in an ocean, or I guess there's four. You pop out above an ocean, you pop out on land somewhere, or you have 20 obsidian. And in the case where you pop out above an ocean, you're not triangulating, you're just going in a straight line and hoping you see it. And then if you have double travel, then you're doing axis or perfect travel. And if you pop out on land, most people do intuitive triangulation, but I think perfect triangulation is probably the more optimal play in 99% of overworld blinds. So I see the whole people would be forced into doing it thing as just not true because the more advantageous, faster, more consistent option has been there for 6 months now. And I can count on my hand the amount of people who do perfect triangulation on every blind. So I guess I disagree on the idea that people would feel forced into using a calculator. If if they really don't want to use it, I think they people should just not use it. I don't know. You don't have to use a calculator if you're on band.
It's kind of true. I mean, that's the same exact sentiment I had when Throw Pro came out. It was like we always knew that using calculations would save you time in a run, but a lot of us were hesitant at embracing it, and so we didn't develop anything on purpose because we thought it seemed not in the spirit of speedrunning, which is something we can
Right.
talk about later as well. Um, and yeah, I had the same sentiment. I was like, you know what? I'm just not going to use it. I don't think it adds fun to my game, and I don't want to do it. Same mindset Illumina has. I never understood Illumina's mindset on not using F3 until the calculator came out. Then I was like, oh, it's just more fun for him. I understand. He's handicapping himself, but it's just a more enjoyable way to play the game. I understand. And then
Right. I mean,
after there was one instance that I saw that changed it for me when Corbanos was on a 114 run. He threw an eye at the village, um, got a number that was a rough estimate from Throw Pro, went to the side, threw the eye, it went sideways, and then he just dug down in the exact angle. And I think he needed the exact number of eyes he had. And in 114, it's not necessarily the biggest time save, but it was a huge save in terms of numbers of eyes. Because
right.
overland, you would throw 5 to 7 eyes probably to get the exact stronghold so that you don't miss it. So in 114, it was huge. In 115, I think it's less important. In 116, it's debatable. But yeah, I had the same sentiment where it was like, don't use it. And then when I was running 114, I was like, why am I handicapping myself? I'm going to finish less runs because I have less eyes. It's going to take me a minute longer to triangulate. I want a good score on the leaderboard. Like, why am I handicapping myself? It doesn't make sense. And so I broke down and I started using Throw Pro. So we'll see if it happens again, but I would be willing to bet the same thing would happen in 116.
I guess. Yeah, that I'm sure some people would probably cave despite not wanting to. But I don't know. I'm probably biased as like the creator and like spokesman of the strat, but I'm amazed at how many people aren't doing perfect travel still because you save so many eye breaks, it's way faster and you can do double travel I spy with it. So I guess seeing how people haven't caved on that, the people who are like, okay, this strat's kind of BS, I'm not doing it. All those people have stood their ground pretty much and aren't doing it still because they don't want to, and more power to them. So, you know, I feel like those people would still stand their ground with calculators and not give in.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I
yeah,
would think it's mainly a time save thing. Now that if we're talking about the full calculator ban versus unban, I still see it as if we ban them, people would be forced to manual perfect for something like access calculated. And so
right.
they're still going to do access calculated because of the speed that they can do it with. They don't want to spend the time to learn the manual perfect, and it takes a while, and you could do a bunch of pauses. But with a full calculator on band, there's no choice. So I do agree with you. Perfect is just simply the play, um, and especially with the macro now, I think it's just you have to. It's most optimal. So
I mean, speaking of the macro, I mean, I've personally stood my ground on the macro, and I know Crooks has as well. Like, I think both of us are of the mindset that we kind of don't want to deal with that. So we do perfect travel manually still, and I think we're both fine with that.
fair.
But yeah, I guess it depends on the individual. Yeah. Um. So on to your third point, you kind of mentioned how you think things would get stale. I personally think losing 95% of my runs to garbage blinds has gotten stale. So I think that's really a matter of like personal preference. Whether or not you think I spying every time would get stale. I personally would love I spying every time. That sounds awesome. Um, and I have been I spying a lot, and I'm not tired of I spying. I'm gonna keep I spying until I guess I stop speedrunning. Um, yeah. I don't know. I think uh, it really is up to the person whether or not they think the calculator meta will get stale.
Yeah, I guess everyone has their own opinions on how much they care about leaderboard and things like that, but when the leaderboard for 116 is a 20-minute world record, you know, the world is your oyster, and any strat development that saves a couple minutes of time is huge. So it was really exciting back in the day. Same thing with 114. The world record was 21-minute classic. You know, it's you can kind of get whatever seed and still have a really good time, and get ocean exposed stronghold and have fun with it. But now that strats have become more refined, we've seen with 115, the strat is very straightforward and the times are so competitive that people aren't really playing for time on the leaderboard. Really, uh, people are grinding for world record, but there's been a lot of complaints 115 is just stale and boring. It's just boating around the ocean, and people have done it and people have gotten a really good time. So if you get a 25-minute time in 115 boating around the ocean, uh, no one really cares anymore. So I think a full calculator and ban, everyone would have to adapt Throw Pro right away. And we would see the leaderboard drastically decrease in average times. And now your, barely sub 15 run, which was pretty good on the leaderboard before, is now just going to be trash. And now you need hit the sub 13 I Spy in order to get the same place on the leaderboard. So some people value that, some people don't. I guess if you're not leaderboard minded at all, then I would agree with you. Like, more I Spies is more fun. So that's totally fair. But it's unfortunate. A lot of our mindset for speedrunning is what's my time on the leaderboard? So if the leaderboard is
Right.
way faster because everyone's using Throw Pro, then it doesn't really give you an advantage. And you no longer have the ability to express your skill in terms of something like a nether travel strategy. Spend a bunch of time doing axis calculated. That no longer is an option.
Right. Eh, yeah, I agree to some point, but I think the amount of runs that people would get, it's overstated with calculators because, I mean, Mully G's been using Perfect Macro for months now, and his new second place run didn't even use it, and his PB before that I don't think used it, and he hasn't really gotten any crazy times with it, and the Perfect Macro, for all intents and purposes, can do what a calculator does, maybe 10 seconds slower because of the positioning you have to do. So I'm not sure if people will just start dumping out crazy times with it. I mean, maybe I am focused more on the higher end of things, like the tippity top. So I maybe for a lower level it would change things more. I'm not sure. But I think at the tippity top, we've seen the opportunity for that to happen where people just start filling the boards with these crazy times now that the macro is here, but it hasn't really happened yet.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think people are still pretty slow to adopt perfect macro. So I think
Well,
it's
I
not
mean, among the
super widely
players
known.
among the players that have adopted it though, we haven't seen a significant increase in the amount of crazy times is what I'm saying. Like I guess Cube probably is the one example I can think of who did use the macro, unless I'm not like unless I'm
Nice
forgetting
choice.
someone.
Nice choice. I went to maybe Minecraft Avenger, but I know Nice Choice just had a recent PB with it.
Okay,
So
and
I
then
mean,
I'm
yeah.
with Cube's case, he did one throw, so at most I know the difference in that would have been maybe 5 or 10 seconds. It's not like he would have missed the I Spy if he wasn't using the macro. I don't think the impact on the boards will be as big as we think at the top level.
Maybe not the very top when you're doing sub tens, because a lot of the runs are so fast you don't really have the opportunity to double travel, I don't think. But in the sub 20, sub 15 range, if you're competing against your friends, it's going to be a huge difference. Throw Pro is massive. So
If you're competing against your friends, I think you can come to a gentleman's agreement to not use computers if that's your thing.
see.
Um, yeah, do you have anything else to bring up in regards to this first topic?
No, I think I've done my responses pretty well, so I think I'm good if you are.
I think I'm good.
All right. Then let's move on to the second topic. And I just want to take a moment to remind everyone to submit any questions they have in the Google form. We've gotten a lot of questions so far, but there's still, yeah, if you have any questions, submit them. Yeah, so now on to the second topic. And I think this is about the gray area within the rules as to what constitutes as a calculator and not. And I think everyone can agree that part of the problems with the current rule set is that what constitutes as a calculator and not is not clearly defined. Because this has led people to push what is allowed to the limit by creating tools that for all intents and purposes function as a calculator, but aren't technically calculators. The best example, of course, being the perfect macro. Yeah, so my point is that we have seen time and time again that if there is a gray area within the rules, people will push it to its limits. So my question to you are, is a calculator unban the only way to get rid of the gray area within the rules, or are there other solutions as well? And 4 gets the opening statements.
Yeah, so I'd argue that the calculator unban will get us more towards closing this gray area than upholding any kind of ban will. Because, as he said, it is pretty clear that people are blatantly kind of pushing the limits of what a calculator is. Because, like, no matter what Peach tells you, the perfect travel macro is a calculator. It might not do any arithmetic, but it does what a calculator would do in practice, so the point still stands. But I think the ban actually upholding the ban would leave us in another gray area still. It would improve upon the current gray area. People wouldn't be able to do these glaring things that, you know, even the people who do it will think, yeah, okay, why am I allowed to do this? I think it closes that to some degree, but especially when it's basically left up to mod discretion as to what goes too far, it's not going to really close the gap entirely. I've already seen people discussing how they're going to maximize their spreadsheets and their tools under the new rule set. So people are already developing new ways of pushing the limits. Like, people are talking about splitting their spreadsheets up, using their file system to navigate them quickly, functions within a spreadsheet that, like, aren't necessarily, like, machine work. I don't really want to get into, like, all the specifics of it right now. But time and time again, we have seen people push the limits of what is allowed. And when we implement a new restriction on things, people will take advantage of that and maximize their experience within those restrictions. So, like, when calculators were first banned, everyone was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is great. We all do our intuitive triangulation like we've always been. And then, you know, I I had a tool developed which was basically a graphing utility, and that was technically allowed. It wasn't doing any calculations, but then people started to complain about that and said, okay, well, this kind of goes against the spirit of a calculator ban. And I think as we go on, as time goes on, people develop new things which go against the spirit of the calculator ban too, but it's really like an external tool ban. So people, yeah, I guess my point on that is that people will continue. We'll reach a point where we're all upset again. I think, like, or not all of us, but half the community is upset at what people are doing. People are going to just end up not liking whatever thing, whatever Peach and JoJo come up with, I guess I want to say. I think chat is also a big issue with the gray area, at least the way it's proposed. Right now, the restriction is basically on chatters accessing the spreadsheet for you, and I think it also implies that they can't do the actual arithmetic for you, which that helps a bit. However, when I do perfect travel, the arithmetic is maybe 50 or 33% of what I'm focused on. A lot of it is really the noting down the information and being able to access it on the ready. So, like, having my starting chunk labeled, having my angle written down for me, all of that would still be allowed under the calculator ban, but it's still significant chat help that would save a lot of mental energy and focus and stress, and up to maybe 5 seconds or so, and that it's still the chat gray area that everybody is kind of iffy about. And then from a verifier perspective, I think if we, even with the current proposed restrictions, or if we decide to start going a bit further with the restrictions to try and cover the gray area, I do not like the implications of that. I think the fact that like a chatter could come in and think they're being helpful and like do a bit of math for you, like tell you your angle change or something, and that potentially puts the validity of your run on the line. I really don't like that premise. I'm sure it wouldn't happen often, but the fact that it can happen, and if it happens to somebody on PB pace, I would feel terrible rejecting their run over that. I think we would end up not rejecting their run over it because that's just unfair. Like it's not something they did. But then we get a gray, or not a gray area, a cosmetic rule where we say you can't do something and then somebody does it and we don't do anything about it, and that ends up being a problem. We've seen time and time again how if we have a cosmetic rule, this community doesn't care that it's a rule and they will do it as much as they can until we stop them. See what happened with X-raying, we let people boat clip the walls when they're like crawling, and they see their bastion, whatever, big deal, they're going there anyway. The entire community started X-raying in their strongholds and acting like it wasn't a big deal until we rejected a run over it. So like I don't think we should leave rules that are going to be cosmetic up like this. I think that's a bad standard to set, and this community is going to abuse the crap out of it. And there's also the argument that, oh, if chat help was so good, why don't people do it? I think all the people that would abuse chat help or VC help right now are using the perfect travel macro. So once they're not allowed to use their macro, they're going to just start training their chat to help them out. I also don't really like how our two options are either an honor system approach or a really garbage, in my opinion, show your work approach. Having to manage your OBS scenes to show your spreadsheet during a run sounds like a nightmare. I don't want to accidentally mess up my hotkey and then, I can't submit my run because my spreadsheet wasn't showing. Or, I have to lose time to fiddle with that. And then I kind of went over how the honor system wouldn't really work anyway. This community lacks honor quite a lot. I know that sounds kind of mean, but I mean, I'm guilty of it too. A lot of us are. I think the perfect travel macro is also a good example of that too, because to me, it's pretty clearly against the spirit of the rules, but people do it anyway, and people are even like, yeah, this should be against the rules, but I'm gonna use it anyway because they're not stopping me. So I think when we leave a rule up to the honor system, it's not gonna be a good rule. So my last point on this is I don't think getting rid of the gray area altogether is going to be possible. My opinion on this changed last night when I spoke with Matthew Bolin, because I saw the tweet about cool divine stuff coming, and I guess if you replace the word cool with terrifying, it would be accurate. He's talking about like you spawn in you spawn in a forest, you put in information about the forest, and then it spits out the stronghold coordinates. So I think that is going to be a problem, but I don't know if that's an issue with calculators or an issue with how we define seed cracking in our rules. So I don't know. I guess I'm going to leave that open-ended as, is that a calculator problem or is that something else? But yeah, that's my opinion on how the actual rules will play out, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, I'll respond to a couple of these things, but I think I'll start out first by saying we both agree hands down that the current rule set needs to change. I
Mm-hmm.
think we both agree there's too much gray area, and either a full calculator ban or a full calculator unban for me is better than the current state of affairs.
I agree.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think you guys watching, there's a poll right now for people to vote on, either a calculator unban or ban. I don't necessarily agree with the definitions laid out for the options on the full calculator ban necessarily. I think I agree with what you're getting at, that if we do a full calculator ban, it needs to be defined as an external tool ban. I would agree with you there. So my proposed rule set would have two basic tenets in mind of speedrunning. Number one, human versus game, which I talked about before. And number two, now that you've brought up kind of chat, that idea, all other people have the same rule set as you. And it's true, your chatters that come in your chat and tell you the angle change may not know that, but over time they will. Over time, everyone in your chat and everyone around you get used to the rules. And I think it's better that we lay down the rules that we prefer right now so that they're historically set in stone, and that over time people in chat will not make these mistakes and give you coordinates and have to be banned, or the run will have to be under question because of it. So I think human versus game and everyone else having the same rules that you do leaves easy to follow, no gray area rules that I think will operate very well. I think MSL as a tournament weekly already does this. They have a pretty much full external tool ban. They have a couple other things that make sure there is no cheating involved and that you don't really need to rely on an honor system. But I think the system works very well. It's very impressive seeing people express their skill in terms of nether travel and be able to do manual perfect travel and things in that tournament. I think it's a great system that the rules RSG could just adopt. So I guess there's a couple things I'll respond to. Yeah. So number one, someone in chat coming in, if we do decide a full calculator ban, coming in and telling you coordinates. I think some of that exists today where there could be questionable help from chat, but I don't think anyone is too overly concerned about it. I think the vast majority of the time you're on a PB pace run where you're really close to top and you're really getting a good time, you're not looking at chat. You are glued to the you're doing your own axis calculator to perfect or whatever. I think the idea that someone's going to look over to an unknown chatter and take what they're saying at face value, and that's where the stronghold chords are, I think are questionable. And I don't think any of us are truly concerned that a top runner or even an unknown runner that has a small chat is really going to do this. And that gets to the honor system approach idea. I think this community does have a good amount of honor. I think I disagree with you there. I think there's going to be bad eggs in every group in society, but I think for the most part, speedrunners in general are about testing their skills against the game. And cheating has always been a thing. It will always be a thing, but we have to have some respect for each other and honor for each other, that we're not just going to go out and research a bunch of different ways to find the seed that we're playing or splice our run and make it undetectable. I think at some base level, we have to say no calculators. If you're doing some weird calculation over here that we can't see during the run, you're going to be caught and we're going to catch you. And if that somehow gets through, it's hopefully not going to be much of an advantage for you, and that you're not exploiting some drastic 5-minute time save by cheating and using some calculator on the side. So I think the cheating thing, I don't like the argument, because we're always going to have an honor system. It's a speed run. And I don't think it's going to be that drastic if we do a full calculator ban. So I would agree with you, your point that the show your work approach, one of the options that the mods have provided in the poll, is bad. I think that's ridiculous too. Honestly, it would make a more rigorous system that you can't cheat, but showing your work in a speed run for doing math, I think, is ridiculous. We need to rely on each other to not cheat and to play fairly. And at the end of the day, you should be speed running for yourself and your own PB, pitting your experience versus the game, and not speed running for clout. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I think it's ridiculous. So the last point, I think your idea with is this seed cracking idea an external tool problem or a calculator problem? I definitely think that's something extra. I think we could have a full calculator unban and still have things like screen reading and seed cracking to find the seed and the stronghold still banned. It might create more of a gray area, but I think we could keep those separate. So again, I think sticking to basic tenets of human versus game is a real simple, straightforward, no gray area way to do it. And so I think it's not only healthier for the community to have just a no machine aid, but I think it's also the solution with the least gray areas, just no external tools at all. So that's my take.
Okay. I should say, saying this community lacks honor was probably a poor choice of words. I don't actually think you guys are all devious cheaters. But I guess what I meant to say is people do things which they don't consider cheating, and they think they can get away with it, so they do it. Like, I don't think anybody who was like Stronghold X-ring is like, hey, I'm sticking it to the mods here. I know what I'm doing is bad. They think, oh, it's not bad, so I'm gonna do it. That topic kind of comes up a lot every time a new glitch is found. Even though we all run random seed glitchless, everybody's trying to get the latest glitch into the run. So it's not that they like want to do it because they're cheaters. It's because they think it's fine and should be allowed and it's cool and whatever. So I guess there's my clarification on like honor. One thing I will say is I think people do use chat backseating a lot on PB Pace, like the world record speedrun for RSG used chat backseating on Pace. And there's the famous Curry Way drive-by Divine incident that people love to bring up. And there's also plenty of times that, I mean, I've personally coached Mully G through a run that ended up being sub 13. So I think people do backseating on Pace. It's just little things that we don't really notice because it's never really getting the stronghold that people are backseating. It's other stuff which I'd argue is more important to the run. Like if Brintilla didn't know his divine number, well, I guess the timing standard was different back then. He would have just paused for another minute and looked through his VOD. But Curryway Divine, that's probably 15 seconds maybe, potentially, that he saved in his run by backseating. So, I don't know. I think we as a community do backseat a lot on Pace, and it is something that's ingrained in us.
Yeah, I would say the Brentilda Divine, of course, was in a time where there weren't stricter rules on chat aid and calculators and pauses and things. So I think it's kind of a different time. But I think
Right.
the rule set I propose, I think we can split every type of aid we see in MCSR into 4 basic categories. Either 1, a basic requirement, 2, a performance optimizer, 3, a filter, or 4, a tool. So if you look at basic requirements, a computer live split recording, I think also allowed in the basic requirements or basic allowed aid is written aids and reminder on another monitor and general advice. I think from the dawn of speedrunning time, people have considered general advice from either chat or someone in a Discord call with you as appropriate. I mean, go this way instead of that way. This looks good. Oh, this thing was over here. I think no one has a problem with that. And I think we should all keep that mindset because it's more fun and it's more community building to have other people tell you, oh, you could actually build this with the materials you have or something like that. So I'm totally fine allowing that in a basic sense. Performance optimizers like Sodium, Starlight, multi-instance, I think we're all okay with that external aid increasing the amount of runs we can play and our reset efficiency. I think those should all be allowed in RSG. But as soon as you get to the 2 last ones, filters and tools, that's where I think different categories need to come into play. A filter either made by Prof Ninja or something that reads your screen or your advancements file and tells you which seeds to reset and which seeds to play and automatically does that for you. That's just a filter, and I think those belong in FSG. And then tools like calculators, I would include even save states that you use in task runs, data packs, and even the graphing tool that you brought up earlier. I would consider an external tool, and I would only have those allowed in a tool-assisted speedrun. And so I think there's different categories for each of these things. General advice is always okay. And again, I think the problem with Brentilda and Curryway Divine, their chat telling them the divine and helping them out, is general advice is okay, but as soon as you get to math and bringing up pure numbers, there's a problem with the rule set right now where it's not defined, and that's the gray area. So I think either way we go, if we either purely ban the math and bringing up numbers from a spreadsheet, or we completely allow them, that would take out the gray area. I think with a full calculator ban, that's not an issue. I mean, you wouldn't be allowed to ask your chat divine. You wouldn't be able to have a divine Twitch command, because I think the divine Twitch command right now is what allows everyone to think, oh, it's totally okay. If my streamer needs divine 14, it's just exclamation point 14, and then that's it. But that's external tool machine aid, and it just opens the door for everything else. And so I think that problem will just be solved with full calculator ban. Your chat is held to the same standards you are.
Yeah. Um, I guess I just don't see the distinction between general advice and, let's say, having someone in your chat looking up your fossil number for you. Because with Brentilda's case, he wasn't told his coordinates, he was told which fossil number he had. And I'm sure if Curryway was just told his number instead of the specific chords, I think we'd still be having the mild controversy that we like to bring up as a talking point every time this debate happens. Because I think someone telling you your fossil number would fall under your category of general advice, and you could have your divine table up on your second monitor. You could just run by it, not even look at it, and someone in your chat tells you, hey, that was number 6, and you saved all the effort of looking at the fossil and thinking about it and identifying it, and you didn't break any of the rules with the external tool because your chat just told you the number of your fossil. They didn't tell you what coordinates they associated with. So I guess I guess I'm not understanding how your proposed categorization would deal with these edge cases like that.
Yeah, if it has to do with either a calculation or a lookup, then it wouldn't be allowed. That's the same standards that would be held for the runner. So I couldn't use a machine or a friend to automatically calculate or look up a value for me. I would, the number of the fossil is heavy advice. It is considered advice under my rule set, which kind of stinks because it's someone doing it for you. But for instance, let's say you're in an AA run and every couple minutes you pause and have 2 minutes waiting where you just ask, Deadpool or Ukester in your chat, what do I do? And they just tell you exactly what to do next. It's a style of play that isn't necessarily you versus the game. It's more of a co-op run at that point. But if we allow general advice, that should be allowed. And in your AA run, if you want to pause like some runners do and just ask chat what to do at every instance, that's fine. You can do that and pauses aren't counted. I would consider the same thing in RSG. Running by a fossil, bring up your F3 really quick and having chat do it for you. It's kind of lame. I'm not gonna lie with you. It's kind of lame, but it is a style of play that you could potentially do. So I think it's okay.
Okay, and then by that argument, using a calculator is kind of lame, but it's a style you could do.
I mean, it is a machine though. There is a distinction. So it
I-
goes against human versus game. So it is a different style of play, but I feel like it should be in a tool assisted category. Yeah.
Okay. I guess we just disagree on the specifics of the categorization there, but you know, that's how it is. Um, yeah, okay. I think that covers all I have to say about topic 2, really. Do you have anything else to really add about that?
No, I think I've covered pretty much everything. I mean, I'm sure I've missed some stuff, but if people have questions, that'll probably bring out the last stuff we missed. So
Okay.
yeah, I think I'm good.
Yeah. Chat, I hope you have some amazing questions for us. Ooh. Mm-hmm. Okay.
No
That's so
shot.
embarrassing. That
No
is actually so
shot, dude.
embarrassing. I unmuted on Discord and I didn't unmute on stream. I've just been dono walling myself.
Oh my god,
Yeah, that's a good
professional
question, Fulham.
streamer.
Let me take that one first.
All right, okay. Let me. I'll run that one back. Let's pretend that didn't happen.
All right, yeah.
So, okay, serious. Looking through the questions that chat have submitted using exclamation mark question, if anyone hasn't submitted their questions already, there has been a few repeated questions, and the question that's been repeated the most so far has been how you would feel about having two separate leaderboards, one for calculators, one without calculators. Quickly to preface, obviously this isn't feasible right now. This isn't going to be possible in the immediate future, given the fact that there already is a poll out in the Java Cord Discord. So make sure you vote in it if you haven't already. But theoretically, how would both of you feel about having two leaderboards, given the fact that TWag started last? I believe 4 should start this time.
I'm
Yeah,
down
go
for whatever. So I actually am in support of a leaderboard split, but not necessarily on the sole issue of calculators. I think a purist split is something that would benefit this community. The I guess rule set for what a purist split has been discussed a lot in the past, and I guess it was never agreed upon. But I think that would give everybody a calculator versus no calculator category split. And I guess if the issue of calculators is still very contentious, one thing I've done in other speed games where there's like a very controversial strategy in place for a category is it's set to use a variable on the board, so you'd be able to see right away, oh, this run had external tools in it, this run didn't. So they'd still be on the same board, but people would kind of be able to filter through what they're really interested in seeing, and it would kind of give people the option of, hey, I can play these two different play styles. It's not going to be a separate category, but there will be a distinction in some kind of way. So I think a variable or a pure split would be how I feel about changing the leaderboards.
It's interesting you have that take because I have pretty much the complete opposite one. So I wouldn't be, it's not too big of an issue. I don't really care that much, but for me, splitting a leaderboard is always the last thing I'd like to do because I like for runners to be able to always compare themselves against the field. That's the point of the leaderboard. If you're just playing for yourself, it doesn't matter for your own PB, but if you're playing for a leaderboard, you want to stack up against someone else. And if we have like 5 or so different categories splits for like 116 RSG, F3, no F3, minor glitches or not, calculator or not, then when you're at the top of your leaderboard, it's kind of like a who cares situation. One leaderboard always rises to the top of all the others as the world record holder. If you go to school and you're like, the world record holder, it's like it's Brentilde, it's 116 RSG. We don't consider SSG that much or other categories. It's like it is Brentilde. And so with an F3 no F3 split, I feel like you're comparing very, very similar things, but they just happen to be on different leaderboards. So I think also if you go through like an entire run and you're a no F3 runner or something, and you don't use F3 as a calculation tool or a angles or triangulation or position or anything, but you just like having hitboxes on, like you could get an insanely good no F3 run, but you just use hitboxes for the dragon, and all of a sudden you're on a different leaderboard. So, maybe I got a 9-minute run and, I'm on top of the world in the F3 category, but now it doesn't count for no F3 because of this like one part thing that I use. So I like everything to be on one leaderboard if you can. Again, it's not too big of a deal, but it just feels bad when you're like, there's multiple world record holders and no one really cares about the other categories because it's all focused on one board.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, like, just splitting on calculators alone wouldn't be a good idea. But I think the idea of a purist is significantly different enough to where it would warrant a split potentially. Because if you're going in with a purist mindset, it's not just you're not using F3. There's all whole heaps of ban techniques on top of that that you would go into the run knowing you're not doing. So yeah, I agree. Like, if you've ever go to like the Cuphead boards on SRC, literally it's impossible to tell what anybody cares about because there's like 20 categories and each one has like 9 subcategories. And I think part of the reason the MC boards are great is because we actually have a reasonable number of categories. So I think the only way I'd ever split is on like a full purist versus whatever, not just a single issue like F3 or calculators.
Yeah, I would say that's the best way of going about it. I do have a follow-up question. Would the purest times also be on the regular leaderboard? Or no?
That's an iffy one. I guess it depends on what we'd want to do because we don't have glitchless runs on the glitched boards because like technically a glitchless run is a glitched run
Right.
even if you don't do any glitches, but we don't duplicate them. So with
Right.
how we run our boards, I'm gonna say no, they wouldn't be on both of them. But like
Yeah.
obviously, if the purest record is like an 830 versus Brentilda's 930, people would recognize that one as the world record, I think.
Yeah, it would just lead into some confusion is all I'm thinking of. If you get the world
Mm-hmm.
record as a purist, then your run can't be on 2 boards, but it is world record, but it's not listed. So I just think it leads to more awkward,
Yeah,
not comparing similar things in the end of the day. So yeah.
that is definitely an issue that could happen, but yep.
Yeah, I can bring up the next question. So this one has all been asked multiple times, and it's about, you kind of brushed on this topic earlier. It's about what are your thoughts and opinions on what other areas a calculator unban can impact rather than just better travel. For example, like things. I mean, like improved divine travel that Matthias touched on, but also like other areas that we can't foresee.
Oh,
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really an unknown and it's kind of a scary one because as soon as if we do decide to do a full calculator and ban, let's say tomorrow Matthew Boland comes out, he's like, all right, if you spawn on a crimson biome and you're at 1.0034 in X, and you look at this pixel in F3C, it'll tell you exactly where the stronghold is. Like, and that is a decision that we will have to live with. And everyone will now have like Crimson Divine and all the records will be sub 10 and we can't go back because it's like, we have a calculator that can do pinpoint precision accuracy that can find a list of 30,000 values that a human couldn't or something like that. I mean, it's a slippery slope argument for sure that probably won't happen, but it's new terrain, and sticking to traditional historical ideas of person versus game makes sure that doesn't happen. So I don't feel like it's going to change too much besides nether travel and reducing the number of eyes. I think the only thing is some unknown kind of divine method that's just going to completely change the way we speedrun. Other than that, I don't feel like there's much calculator can influence.
yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I mean, I can't see any other use for a calculator other than minor conveniences, I guess, if you need to like figure out how much of an item you need or something, but we kind of already allow that. I think nobody really cares if you're like dividing your nuggets by 9 or something with a calculator. Um I will say I don't think it's necessarily a crazy hypothetical that Divine can get crazy with the calculator. So I think that is a discussion we will need to have as to like what goes too far in terms of reversing a seed. I think that gets more into like the very technical things though that might not necessarily be a community fronted discussion. I think that like in terms of like what determines cracking a seed. I don't know. But one thing I was thinking of that would be really cool if calculators were unbanned would be like an all-in-one utility where like you have a bunch of tick boxes with your various divines, and it would kind of like give you a map of like your stronghold ring, and if you tick off divine, it kind of eliminates the area that's possible for you to build it. So like you hop through your portal, you tick off your portal divine, and then you see your fossil, you add that on top of it, or you get a buried treasure at your spawn, you add that on top of it. So I think that's an area that like that's not necessarily just spitting out coordinates for you, that I think a calculator could really improve the experience of the game if you're into that sort of thing. Like, I think that'd be really cool to have, personally.
All right. If both of you feel finished, I think we're ready to wrap up right here. So I want to thank you, both of the panelists, for taking the time to come here and also taking the time to prepare. I I, I think the discussion was very fruitful, and I appreciate that. You know, you you took it seriously and yeah, had a civil discussion.
Yeah, thank you for
How could I
hosting.
ever get mad
And,
at Wags?
Very true.
yeah, thank you for hosting. And I think regardless, get out and vote. Regardless of what decision we make, I'm happier with either. So, this
Yeah.
weird gray area is not a good spot. So let's decide once and for all, calculators or no. And yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah. Thanks for hosting this. I'm really glad we finally have a platform where like two people who are strongly opinionated on it can discuss it and not just have like weird non sequitur Twitter conversations about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, the intention of this was to get the discussion going. I know that it's already been going lots on Twitter, in Discords, yada yada yada. And effectively, I don't think any of it's been particularly. Well, it's been going around in circles effectively, and I thought if we try and get it onto a platform that's, as upfront and civil as it can be, then it's the best thing that we can try and do. I know some people have already voted. I know some people haven't already voted. If you haven't, then please do. I really couldn't care if you vote for yay or nay. But using your opinion to vote is important. And fuck, what was I going to say? Yes, I'm really grateful for you two both coming on, and thank you very much to Ninjabrain for doing almost all of the back end work behind this. I'm basically here to host the thing, like on a channel. A few people have actually approached me and said this probably wasn't a good idea. I'm hoping that I've tried to keep it as informative and as unbiased and such as possible. If anyone's missed the start of this, it'll all be up on YouTube by hopefully within 24 hours. So that should be fine. If you want to go and rewatch any of it, then feel free to. And yeah, if any of you have anything to say, then feel free.
Not a good idea. That's ominous sounding, kind of spooky.
Yeah,
I
no,
personally think
it's
this
good.
was a great idea to have, and
Yeah, I think informing the community, I think a lot of people don't know about all this stuff. So I think that's very important. So
I think having like good, nice, friendly debates like this about other topics could also be like a fun thing to do in the future. Just anytime there's a contentious issue, or even just for fun, like I think I'd like to watch something like this.
Could definitely
yeah.
be a consideration to do it again for other random debates. Could be quite fun. But yeah, if there's nothing else you guys have to say, I think I'll quickly end off stream. So thank you, all of you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
No problems
Yeah.
at all. Sweet. All right. Cheers.